Let's learn about the checked pseudo-class today. Let's start with the definition. The checked pseudo-class selector selects any checkbox, radio, or option that are currently checked or toggled to an on state. Let's start with the checkbox. Here we have three checkboxes, A, B, and C. The HTML code looks like this, so we have three checkboxes and they are under the same group. To make the checkbox checked initially, we need to add the checked attribute to the input element. But none of the checkboxes have the checked attribute, so no checkbox is checked. Therefore, with these CSS styles, the orange outline defined in the checked pseudo-class won't be applied to any of the checkboxes. Now, let's check the checkbox B by adding the checked attribute to the HTML. Since checkbox B is checked, the orange outline will be applied to checkbox B now. As we discussed in the default pseudo-class video, if we want to select the label of the checkbox, so in this case checkbox B, and apply the orange outline to the label, we can use the adjacent sibling combinator followed by the label. So this will select the label if its checkbox is checked. So in this case, the checkbox B is checked, so the directly following label will receive the orange outline. Now, let's take a look at what happens when multiple checkboxes are checked. Now, let's revert the code back so the checkbox itself gets the orange outline. This time, we will also tick the checkbox C. And even if the checked attribute is not added to the HTML code in the checkbox C by default, the state of checkbox C is now on. So the orange outline specified in the checked pseudo-class will be applied to checkbox C as well. Now, let's untick checkbox B. Even though checkbox B was initially checked by default and the checked attribute still remains in the DOM, the actual current state of the checkbox B is off now. Therefore, the styles defined in the checked pseudo-class won't apply to checkbox B anymore. Alright, now let's move on to the radio button. We have three radio buttons, A, B, and C. Currently, none of the radio buttons are checked. Therefore, the orange outline defined in the checked pseudo-class won't be applied to any of the radio buttons. Now, let's make the radio button B checked. Radio button B will receive the orange outline because it has now the checked attribute by default in the HTML code. This time, let's also make the radio button A checked. Unlike the default pseudo-class, which applies the orange outline to both radio button A and B, the checked pseudo-class will only apply the styles to the radio button that is in the on state. Since only one radio button can be on within the same radio button group, so in this case, only radio button B will receive the orange outline because if there are multiple radio buttons are checked by default, so we have checked on A and B, the later radio button will receive the on state in the HTML. By the way, as mentioned in the default pseudo-class video, having multiple radio buttons with a checked attribute is not invalid in HTML. Alright, now, if we click on the radio button C, the orange outline will move to C, as the state of the radio button C is now on within this radio button group. Finally, let's take a look at the option element. We have a country select box with 4 options. Now, let's add the selected attribute to the Korea option. As we learned in the default pseudo-class video, there are limitations in updating the styles of options, so no orange outline will be applied to the Korea option. Even if we choose another option, let's say United States of America, no outline will be applied to this option either. Alright, let's head over to CodePen and practice writing the checked pseudo-class.